Hi everyone, welcome to a new game analysis episode. Today I'm going to show you a game that I played a few weeks ago, and it was a really cool game. So I'm going to try to explain to you whatever it is that was happening on the board. So let's get started. I began with e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop, bishop. We have c3, knight f6, d3. So this is what is known as the Italian game, or more specifically the gioco piano. And here for a really long time, people preferred going d4 instead of d3. And d4 is more of a direct approach to this opening, whereas d3, which I believe is more popular these days, leads to more close positions, strategic battles, a lot of maneuvering. Now black continued with d6 and I went bishop b3. And the idea of bishop b3 is simple. I know that at some point black is going to want to push d5, and I just don't want the bishop to be on c4 when that happens, because by not having the bishop on c4, and therefore by not having to immediately like move the bishop or do something, react to black playing d5, I'm giving myself more reaction choices. And you may be wondering, wait, didn't black just play d6? Like, why are you already speaking about d6, d5 when they've just played d6, so they're not gonna play d5 immediately after? And that's a fair point. And the reason I played bishop b3 so early is something called flexibility. And well, flexibility is quite an advanced concept, so I'm not gonna super explain it. Part of the reason being that since it's an advanced concept, I myself master it occasionally. But the point is as follows. So if you have multiple, for example, development choices, and you don't really know which one to choose, or maybe you want to choose one in reaction to your opponent doing something specific, then you might want to start with the move that is helpful and that you know that you want to play eventually, and that doesn't really cut the future perspectives that you might have. So to give kind of a Mickey Mouse example here, if say I was wondering, should I go bishop g5, but maybe I wanna play bishop g5 after black castles, so they don't have the incentive of playing h6 g5 because they've just castled there, but then they haven't castled yet, or should I just stay with the bishop on e3 and try to trade dark squared bishops? And maybe I want to do like one depending on whether black castles short quickly or not. So instead of making a decision, I'm just postponing the development of this bishop and making a move that, in a way, I know that I want, which is to have this bishop back to b3, so that the pawn on d5 doesn't hit the bishop with tempo. And also, in addition, maybe there are some lines when you want to not trade the bishop for either the black knight or maybe the light squared bishops, and therefore you may want to retreat it to c2, which is something that you like don't have that option if you just keep the bishop to c4. So black played h6, we have h3 just preventing the pin, h6, knight d2, short castling. And here, a very normal way to continue is just short castling here. But the move that I played is knight to f1. And knight to f1 might look a little bit strange, but the point is the following. Since we played c3, which, is hoping to support d4 one day and is preventing black from kind of activating their pieces on those key squares, we took away the square from the knight, right? So in so many other openings, the knight is the one that goes to c3. So we had to put the knight on d2, but the knight, obviously, it doesn't take a genius to see that the knight on d2 is not really well placed, if nothing else just because it's blocking the dark squared bishop. So what oftentimes happens in these structures is that white comes up with this idea of transferring the knight to the king side. And why did I do this before short castling? Well, you're gonna see the answer to that in a couple of moves. So black here played d5, and since I'm compromising a little bit my development, or not really compromising, but I'm delaying my development a little bit, and therefore my pieces are a little bit disorganized, I don't really open up the center. So I don't really want to take and give black like more activity in the center, because when you are playing a more maneuvering game, what you want is for the center to be closed, so that while your pieces are awkwardly maneuvering, there is no like direct confrontation. So what I want is to be able to just recapture on e4, and okay, the d file opens, but there aren't really any squares for black to infiltrate even if the d file opens up. and therefore I played queen e2. So we guard the pawn, and we also move the queen out of the d file. So if there's a trade, we don't trade queens because, well, if for example I played knight g3 and we had trades and queen takes d1, I don't think there's anything like wrong with this position, but I don't know, I just don't want to trade queens at move 11 basically. So I went queen e2, black played rook e8, and here, surprise surprise, I went g4. And yeah, this might seem a little bit crazy, especially if you haven't seen this structure before. But the point of this move, and actually before I explain the point of the move, I would want to iterate that I did not come up with this idea. And it would be really cool if I did, but I didn't. Like, this is a kind of a known plan. And in fact, we are still following a game between two grandmasters played in 2015. So, like I said, this is not groundbreaking, but it's still pretty cool. So, what's the point of g4? Well, I'm saying black has already committed to castling on that side of the board, and I haven't. I might, for what is worth, actually go castle long or just stay with the king in the center. We'll see. I don't know. Hopefully, I'll castle long, but it really depends on how the game goes. In the meantime, black has committed to the king there and has also pushed h6, which makes it so that if I play g5, I'm guaranteed um to open up a file just because of the trade. So if the pawn had still been on h7, then this attack would have been just, wishful thinking, because even if I pushed the pawns just like I did, it would take me much longer to trade with the black pawns and open up a file. So in a way, like, g4 is a plan convinced, no, conceived in response to black castling and having put the pawn on h6. So black played queen d6. I went knight g3, so let's first improve the knight, control the h5 square, control the f5 square. Black played d4. And here, once again, I don't want to engage in the center, so I'm doing stuff on the king side. I am not interested in, like a crazy battle in the center because my pieces are on the side, and also, hello, my king is still in the middle, right? And to be fair, computer doesn't see like a huge eval drop with this move, pawn takes d4, but I think logically it just kind of seems like only black has to gain from this, because now black gets access to this d4 square, and no matter how hard you try, if black really wants to have a piece on d4, they will, because you just don't have another pawn to defend that knight, and this is what is commonly known as an outpost, right? So you're giving up that square basically, and it just seems more logical to just continue with what I was doing, so I played g5. Black took. Here I took with the knight, so we're attacking the pawn on f7, and I'm also opening up the queen's diagonal, and black played knight d8 to defend the f7 square, and I did rook g1. Another move that I considered here was knight to h5, and I think this is a pretty sweet idea as well. So the point is, I want to trade black's knight on f6, because that knight on f6 is very often a pretty good defender to the castle king. So I think there might even be a saying like knight f6. No, so it's knight f8 never mate, and knight f6, I don't know, knight f6 castle king's best mate or best friend. Anyway, there's a thing. Knight on f6, good defender for the castle king. And therefore, since it's a good defender, you want to trade it. And of course, black really should let me take. If I was to play this move, they shouldn't take me, so that I have, the opportunity to jump in with the queen. This is looking pretty dangerous for black. But I decided, okay, you know what? Let me first put the rook on the g file, because I'm actually not in a rush here. Like, it might feel dangerous that my king is still on e1 and oh no, like I broke the principles. But realistically speaking, I have a fence of pawns. Like, black is gonna need at least a few moves to generate something against my king. So it makes sense to first, like, bring my pieces to their best possible squares. In this case, this rook on g1, and then try to do something more decisive. Black took on c3, I took back, they did queen b6, And queen b6 was a little bit annoying to me during the game because since black has this battery, now the pawn on f2 is a bit annoying. So now I need to think, oh, I'm leaving with the queen. For example, if I play knight h5 and they take and I take back with the queen and then they take on f2 and they're taking my rook on g1, like, is that something that I want? Probably not. So I went bishop e3. And the point of bishop e3 was, well, if they take, I'm going to take back with the f pawn, and then I'm still going to have an army of pawns in front of my king. And in addition to that, maybe I'm opening up the f file so that the other rook can also join in, bullying the black king. So black played bishop e6. I took, and knight f5. And knight f5 is directly threatening bishop takes e6 because knight and rook are finally connecting against the g7 pawn. So it's a typical remove the defender idea, right? We want to remove the defender of the g7 pawn. So black played g6. And here I spent a really long time on this move. I spent like 20 minutes on this move, which was really dangerous. First of all, because the time control was like 75 minutes. Like I didn't have that much time to begin with. And also, there is this saying quite popular in chess, which is that if you spend 20 minutes on a move or more, you are really likely to make a blunder just because if you were convinced by the move that you're about to play, then you wouldn't have spent like 20 minutes talking yourself into it. Of course, just like everything in chess, there are always exceptions, but here it was a little bit true. So I spent 20 minutes because I really wanted to make this move that my intuition was super convinced that it should be the move. I really wanted to make this move d4 work. And I know you're like, whoa, didn't you say that you don't want to like make stuff happen in the center? What happened to that? And the reason I thought d4 was a good move, and it's working by the way, it's just super complicated. But the reason I thought d4 would be good is because I want to force this knight on e6 to move away so that the bishop is once again pinning the f7 pawn so that I can play rook takes g6, and then from then onwards we'll see. And I was just, I was like, okay, I probably have a good position, so I don't need to like make d4 happen. Like just it's not gonna be like, oh, I either play d4 and I win or I play d4 and I lose. But at the same time, it felt so nice that I wanted to make it work. And here's a line that I was calculated. So takes, knight takes d4. Now we go rook takes g6. If the king, you know, tries to run away, now we have bishop h6, literal checkmate. So the king has to go on the h file. Now we give a check, and now the point is that if we get a piece on the g file, it's over. Like that's the last bit that we need for checkmate. So one thing that we can do here is take, and then not care about the rook on a1, but play f3. And the queen is just smoothly sliding over to g2, and then checkmate is coming. Now, instead of f3, computer has a really savage idea here. Which is long castling. So like same point, you just push the rook to the g file and it's checkmate. And this move just looks so savage. I don't know. I feel like if somebody playing this against me, I'd feel insulted. Full of respect for my opponent for making this move, but also at the same time insulted somehow because it just seems like the king is walking into full danger, but black just doesn't have anything. Like queen c5 check, the king slides over to b1, and that's it, GG. In the meantime, the rook on g1 is just devastating. So yeah, pretty crafty idea from the computer. However, if we go back, so after d4 takes, black doesn't have to take with a knight, right? Like black can think, oh, she wants to take on g6, so let me take with the bishop. And what I was thinking here was, yeah, okay, so let's say I take, and now they take with the knight, and now I go for the check. But after king f8, I don't actually have a continuation because I no longer have the bishop to slide to h6, and my queen unfortunately has no entries. Like it just doesn't have a square to infiltrate on the king side, and Now if we're looking at the pieces, like everything is on fire. Like I'm losing pieces left and right. The rook is hanging, the knight is hanging, the queen is hanging, and I'm also down in no, I'm not down in no, material is equal, sorry, but I'm probably gonna be down something really soon just because I have so much stuff hanging. So yeah, this looked promising for white, but ultimately I was thinking about this position in my head and be like, yeah, I'm not sure. And well, if we go back, instead of takes, bishop takes, instead of taking the bishop, what you do here is really cool, but also really hard to find, especially if you're calculating this from a distance, which is you sack the rook first. Like, come on. And now when the pawn takes, the problem is that when the knight takes on d4, that knight on e6 is just so weak. Like you're just gonna pile up on that pinned knight, and yeah, there's nothing that black can do. And I didn't see this idea. Kind of a cool one, but also like I said, pretty difficult to spot from a distance. So after spending 20 minutes, I was like, okay, let me not play d4 just because my intuition tells me that it's a cool move. Let me just, like not burn all my bridges. So I went queen to f3. And queen to f3, I was thinking, I will move this knight on out of f5, and then the knight on f6 will be attacked, and just generally, I'm just getting closer to infiltrating with the queen. So black took, I took back with the pawn, and now black went king to f8. So they're attacking now the knight on f5. I dropped back with the knight. And here black had a move that was quite liberating from them, and I think maybe this could have changed the course of the game, even though the eval was still showing slightly better for me. But sometimes when the momentum is going in the favor of one player, in this case in my favor because I'm the one attacking and he's the one kind of like, dodging the hits, and then all of a sudden if this dynamic shifts a little bit, even if the eval bar hasn't, you know modified radically, the I don't know, the vibe changes. I don't know how to explain it better than that. So sometimes maybe the eval hasn't shifted that much, but because the vibe of the game has, all of a sudden the player that was, the player that has just gained the momentum starts finding good moves easily, and the other player starts struggling. And I think maybe if black here hand went knight to c5, maybe we would have had that kind of situation, because knight c5 is a double purpose move. So on one hand it's guarding the knight on f6 that was being attacked, right? But it's also threatening to maybe get rid of this bishop, and also threatening to take on d3. And in fact the move that white has to play here is bishop to c4, I think. And the game, like I said, the eval bar is still like slightly better for white, but the momentum is starting to shift a little bit, like after something like rook a d8, reinforcing the threat on d3. Instead, black played king to g7, so guarding the knight with the king. And anticipating knight to c5, I thought, well, what would be a move that would be helpful to me? And also, yeah, I know that black wants to come knight to c5 and hit this pawn on d3. So I went king e2. And I was really happy with this move during the game because I thought, first of all, like, look at me having my king in the center and having actually such a safe king. Like, these army of pawns are not going anywhere. Like, these pawns are here to stay. And I like this move because it's not just guarding the d3 pawn in the event that the knight jumps into c5, but it's also guarding the e3 pawn so that if this queen needs to, move away, I don't have to worry about the black queen infiltrating with check and then, starting harassing my king. And also on top of that, now I'm bringing potentially the rook from a1 to the open f file. And black here play knight to h7. And what's funny is that here I was hoping for black to play knight to c5. I thought that if they play knight to c5 is over. And this is what I calculated. I calculated knight takes g6, pawn takes g6, queen to f5. So now I'm threatening queen takes g6, and you can't actually allow me to do that. Like if you play something like rook d8, you don't care, then I'm taking you and I'm mating you. So you just can't allow this. However, if you move the knight out of the way to protect the pawn with the queen, now the queen infiltrates, and when you go to the corner, now rook takes g6, and you have to basically give up the queen. And even though materially maybe you're not that bad, even if, yeah, it's like rook and knight for a queen, which in some situations might be holdable for the side without a queen. This situation just isn't, because I'm up material and the attack keeps going. Like the king on h8 is still pretty trash, right? So this is what I thought, and I was like, yes, please play knight c5. It looks like such a tempting move. But funnily enough, here I just missed that the king can go to h6. And it looks kind of silly, but the king is not that vulnerable on h6, of course, for very concrete reasons. So if you try to go rook g4, saying, yeah, I'll checkmate your next move. Now black has queen f6, and it's not just guarding the square, but it's offering you a trade. And if you're thinking, oh, okay, no problem, let me first bring this other rook so that then I can do the maneuver that I want. Now black has rook f8. This is pretty bad. You have to retreat the queen, and then there a bunch of trades are gonna happen, and then white is just a piece down. So white is praying for a perpetual here, basically. And maybe there was one earlier, I don't know, but what I when I played king to e2, I thought, oh, they're gonna play knight c5 now, and I'm gonna go for the sacrifice, and it's gonna be so cool. And yeah, I did not think that king to h6 would be a thing here. But none of this happened, because in the game black played knight to h7, and here queen to h5, reinforcing the idea of knight takes g6. So here, if you just ignore me, I straight up just sacrifice, right? And after something like takes, the rook comes in, and at least the king is gonna retreat. The knight is gonna be weak. If the king goes on the f file, the other rook jumps in. So this just the pawn on e5 is hanging. This just looks really, really crushing for white. um or you can maybe even just take with the queen and then try to pick up the knight and go for the checkmate. I don't know. So queen to h5, black played knight e to f8. So very logical move, just like guarding everything. Oh, and by the way, you can't go knight c5 now, which would have the same idea of opening up the queen to guard the g6 pawn, because now white has bishop takes f7. And when the king moves the knight hangs. So knight e to f8. Here I went for the check, and king to h8. And this was a strange moment, because I almost reached for the piece to make the move that I wanted to make, and then I started doubting myself. So what I had calculated here was to play queen to h6. And queen to h6, we're threatening queen g7, and there's only one way to defend this, which is queen to f6, and then I was thinking rook a to f1. So this was my idea that I was calculating when I jumped in with the queen here. But then once I was actually in this position, I started thinking, wait, hang on, like rook a to f1, if they take my knight, this doesn't seem so convincing. And well, to the computer it is. Maybe not to a human, because basically what you need to do here is first of all retreat. And then you're threatening to take on f7, you're threatening to take on f5, so the pieces just keep on piling on. And even though black is, materially speaking, a pawn up, if we're looking at the pieces that are actively doing something, literally every single one of my pieces is doing something, whereas the rook in the corner is not participating in any way. So of course, if I don't do anything worthwhile here, then black is going to beat me in an endgame. But when we're looking at the pieces activity, it doesn't really matter that black has that extra material, because who's participating? Not that rook on a8. So yeah, I feel like now that I'm looking at it, it looks convincing. But while I was looking at it during the game, I started panicking a little bit, because I was like, wait, did I just go for this whole line where both my knight and my queen are hanging? And I'm starting to doubt now that I'm like halfway in. But then another much cooler idea came to me, and honestly, this idea is the reason this video is happening. And the idea is bishop takes f7, sacrificing the queen on h5. Just take my queen, I don't care, because if you take it, it's checkmate. That's just how life is, you know. Sometimes you take a queen and you get mated next move. Obviously, the same thing with the knight. And it's actually pretty tough for black to move anything here because I'm not just hitting the rook, but I'm also weakening the g6 pawn. And if I take the g6 pawn, then the rook comes in. The knight on h7 is weak. So yeah, just overall very, very tough situation for black. So he went queen to b2 check, king on f3. Here I was so happy with this move, king to f3, because I was like, look at my king, not castling, going for a walk around the board, yet being so safe compared to the king on h8 that is about to get mated, as you as you will see. Spoiler alert. And here black played kind of a cool move. Queen takes a1. So all of a sudden, both our queens are hanging. What is going on? Obviously, I can't take his. I can't, because I lose the whole idea of the checkmate, and now he takes mine, and this is horrible. This is devastating. Um, of course, I can take this rook, but when we're looking at the remaining material, I'm a piece down. This is not what I wanted. So at the same time, black is threatening to take my rook, and then he doesn't just take my rook, but he starts threatening to check my king, and these two pieces, like three of my pieces, are freaking hanging at the moment: my queen, my knight, and my rook. So what do? We threaten checkmate, and this is completely devastating. This is GG territory. And the reason is, well, first of all, I got my queen out of the attack without without giving black time to take their queen out of danger. So now when they defend the g7 square, I can just take their queen for free. And two queens were hanging, only one of them emerged alive. But here I didn't even take the queen, I just took the knight. Because the checkmate threat is actually unstoppable. You can lose another rook to try to stop it, and then I take your queen. And here my opponent resigned after 29 moves, and yeah, I went home feeling pretty good about myself. Just can do that to somebody, right? So yeah, this was the game. I thought it was pretty cool. Let me know in the comments if you liked it, if you found the tactics, and yeah, consider following the channel, liking the video. Thank you so much for following today, and take care of yourselves.